Welcome back to the Synergistic CX podcast. This is part 2 of our 3-part episode where we're focusing on the car rental industry with our special guest, Nabil Rizkallah of GWR Consulting. In the previous segment, we discussed how car rental companies handle responses to online reviews and also the marketing mix. Now we'll focus on the customer journey and the many touch points there that can make or break the customer experience. We'll start with the customer journey itself, also known as the marketing funnel. So the customer journey is the effective journey that a customer takes in an industry where they're working with a particular brand and they have a need. They start off identifying that they have a need for that product or service, and then they move through the various steps of exploring that need, figuring out who's available, what options there are. And as they start to decide to actually go visit the establishment or explore the service, that's another step in the journey. They then decide to actually visit the place or purchase the product, interact with the staff, and do all of the other various customer types of activities as they interact with that brand. As we move through the customer journey, eventually we are looking to see that customer, ideally from a brand perspective, become an advocate at the very end after helping to retain them as a future customer. So you can see here across the top the customer journey stages. You'll see the 5 different areas up there at the top that are awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and advocacy. Those are the 5 stages of any industry's customer journey. Then it gets broken down underneath into the different steps inside of each stage. There's 1 general step of awareness, then the various consideration steps, 5 conversion steps, 2 retention steps, and advocacy. There's a lot more detail here. The best way to see this is to download the study from our website, cx-channel.com. So we look here and we've got a variety of steps that are somewhat similar to other industry studies that we've performed. There is a key component with the person. Emil, I saw that in the marketing mix, we saw that the people were a heavily mentioned aspect of the customer journey. So we have greetings from the retail agency staff. So that would be when you finally arrive at the store and you're looking at the first person face to face as you go to pick up your rental car, all the way through the conversion phase where you actually pick the car, what's available. A lot of times in the car rental industry, you are pre-purchasing on an app, for example, or a website, a particular class of car, and you don't really know exactly what you have until you get there. So there's that component there. We'll see how that goes. And all the way through to the pricing. We know there's often very different types of pricing with respect to car rentals. There's a base rate and so forth. But then there's lots of options. There's decisions about who's going to pay for the gas. Do you fill it up when you go to drop it off, or do you pay the rental agency to do that for you? So before we move on to see the actual results plotted against this, does anybody have any opening thoughts or comments on what we might expect to see?
I think the weight on each part of the journey will be dependent on the market and how developed it is in its technology. So, and like how fast that market is in getting customers. What we've seen is quite a bit of difference in where the weight is in the journey map, customer service wise, depending on the market.
Okay. Well, let's move on to see the moment of truth. So we'll take the reviews from our industry study and we've plotted them against the customer journey map so we can see how the various portions of the customer journey fare, at least based on the online reviews that customers are talking about. Wow. So on first glance, this appears to be, I'd say overall, probably one of the worst customer journey maps that we've seen.
It is by far the worst customer journey map that we have seen.
I can sense some pessimism there.
Yeah, there's one item in the green. The rest are yellow or red.
One tiny speck in the green.
Yeah. Wow. So on the customer journey map, for those of you that haven't seen one of these before on our podcasts or through one of our industry studies in the magazine, You can see here at the bottom the various steps of the customer journey, and across the top are our 5 stages like we've always had. You'll see here the various points in the middle and a line connecting those points. Those points, the sizes of those circles, represents how many times that particular part of the customer journey, that particular step, was mentioned in the online reviews that we studied. So the larger the circle there, for example, greetings from the retail agency staff, the rental agency staff, was mentioned quite a bit. So people are talking about, in the online reviews, they're talking about their first interaction with the staff members at the actual rental car agency. Similarly, they're talking a whole lot about the explanation of the rental terms themselves. And the line connecting those dots is the average sentiment. In other words, how happy or upset those particular customers were in their online reviews with respect to what was mentioned online and those various steps. The gray area is an interesting component here where we actually show the standard deviation of the mean of those particular responses. In other words, where do the bulk of those responses fall when they're plotted against the customer journey map? So areas that have a larger spread of gray are more variant and potentially more inconsistent results from a customer experience standpoint, whereas tighter areas are going to be potentially more consistent. But overall, it looks like things are kind of just roughly spread as far as the gray goes. The variance is kind of fair throughout, but golly, those averages are not good.
That's why you need mystery shopping, by the way, and that's why you need VOC. Because what this tells you is that people only fill reviews when they're either extremely mad or extremely happy. And in that relationship with the rent-a-cars, it also shows here that the relationship is actually quite weak in the sense that you might come a little bit like a coffee shop on your vacation in a very foreign country. Your relationship is about this 30 minutes you're there, as opposed to a place where you go to regularly. So in the end here, what is it showing is extreme responses on the divergent, on the extremes of a line, where mostly it is reporting when it's negative. So basically, rent-a-car companies do not know any information about the good parts of the operation, because nobody's reporting it, or in the best case scenario, that relationship is only neutral, means it is not wowing the client in any way or form. So it is actually neutral, and then if anything goes wrong, it's going to the extreme wrong, and it is showing on the conversion and going on. What remains? People that are the ones that are in what they're calling here retention, means the few that went through the whole line and might be regular renters, it's showing as green. But nothing is mentioned on the rest that they were impressed neither by the research or the interaction at the beginning. It was neutral.
Well, let me, Nabil, since you started this conversation, let me ask you a question, but I'll first put this question in context. So, first of all, I'll again make the statement that what we see in this micro industry is quite different from what we normally have seen in the other industry studies. But what is, as far as the customer journey is concerned, there is a stark difference in the fact that normally we see the conversion, and especially the central step in the conversion, scoring the highest, or one of the higher points in customer sentiment, if not the highest. So normally in the other micro industries, we see focus on the conversion, real focus on the central part of the conversion, and we are used to seeing the best results in conversion in general. And here we see the opposite. We actually see that the conversion performs the worst. Specifically here, the steps with rental terms explanation is by far the lowest with regards to customer perception. And we can see that the amount of conversations is not insignificant. It is quite the area of the circle is quite big. And then payment and pricing. But we did see earlier that payment and pricing were problematic when we were discussing the customer mix. So when we look at the customer journey, we are used to seeing a low customer perception with regards to the post-conversion activities, such as the retention. So I expected to see retention being in the red, because that is the norm from what we have seen so far with the customer journeys. But I really expected the conversion, the central part in the conversion, to be categorically in the green, and now we see it actually categorically in the red, which is highly unusual compared to everything else that we have seen. So based on your experience in that industry, and obviously you have done a lot of mystery shopping, a lot of voice of customer survey studies, what would you attribute that low performance in the center conversion?
In our side of the world, human interaction is critical. So all the feedback is basically goes around the humans, and then if the humans are being able to respond to any query, information, or problem solving. The other thing that is also human, and I'm saying human here because there's also the interaction with an online system, right? So if we first take the human element, speed of service is quite critical in rental. So it is always marked as either a source of a problem or a source of a complement, but mostly a problem. And the speed of service is obviously a process issue, number one, but also managed by people. And if the people cannot respond why the process is taking so long, let's say you chose the car online, you went to the place at your 3 o'clock in the morning in the airport, and then after filling many requirements online, you go there, they take 10 minutes to take your driver's license, to scan it, and then your ID, upload and scan, and then give you a form to fill. Or worse, they take around 15 minutes to fill questions, a passport number, ID number. Let's notice here many companies we've worked with. If they scan the passport or the ID, the information is not read and imported into the system. They scan it, upload it, ask you all the questions, and then they refill the data manually. It's a little bit like a hotel check-in. You're tired, it's the end of the day, assuming you got the car you wanted, assuming the price is okay, you did not have a good experience. So even if everything else goes right and nothing goes wrong, and you have no disagreements with this industry or that client, this is high friction. And I think this pipeline or this journey shows that somebody somewhere has to redesign the journey because customers are not happy with it. Very simply, it is archaic, it's old, a little bit like we said at the beginning, offline, like old banks, and potentially maybe insurance companies at some point. It is a very legal interaction, high friction, and the people you are interacting with usually are not empowered enough to solve any of your problems. They are just data entry to get you there. So anywhere where the system is tripped, let's say you booked a car, but you want another car, you just got there, you booked a car, but now you want a car seat with it. All of this process, they usually, not always, the team might be not ready or capable to solve it. So they make you wait until they call somebody else to solve it. All of that you are marking in your line because I think in your data, but also in my data, it shows that speed of service is absolutely critical. And the second best thing would be the ability to solve problems. And that is clearly a pain point and a friction point for customers. Now, assuming all of that goes quickly and somebody rents cars regularly, then they're sort of retained, and that would explain this weird thing, which is the weird green point at the end, because it should be aligned all in, as in the whole industry is a new journey map.
So normally, Nabil, we do see the retention stage is quite strange in the part that normally the first post-conversion step scores in the red, and then the second, which is now getting into the loyalty programs, usually is in the green. So we see this almost inadvertently in any micro industry that we have studied. So the first post-conversion step, red, next, which is loyalty category in the green. And we see the same thing here. The loyalty program engagement scores very high. Now, it is very small part of the interactions, but it is not surprising that that the loyalty program engagement is that high. It's the nature of what that step represents, I guess.
Nabil, let me ask you a question. Do you also see this as a consequence of the pricing policy, where brands, because of the search engines, they have to have low prices, and then in the end they have to compensate somehow in the terms and conditions? For example, here in Lisbon, you can have a low budget car for about 15 euros per day, but then if you don't fill the gas to hand out the car, you have to pay a penalty of 90 euros just because you forgot or didn't have time because you are delayed for your flight. And this is also something that creates friction in the terms and conditions part and the clarity and transparency. Do you see this as well as something that it's hurting companies in one way because they are trying to give a lowest price, but then compensating other things in the terms and conditions? Because if something goes wrong, if the customer has this problem or an accident with the insurance or something, and they need assistance, do you see this as red flag in the reviews?
I think companies have to decide what's more expensive, to fill up fuel themselves or lose a customer, for example. So I don't understand the fuel filling. I'm giving just as an example. In my part of the world, they bill you for the expected filling of the fuel. So everywhere you pay the fuel. But I think the companies have to decide that do they have enough customers so they feel they don't need to rebuild their journey map, or they need to rebuild it from scratch, as opposed to what I think happened is that a normal paper business built an online system on top of the old system. So basically there's still a paperwork business, but it has a website. And they didn't yet get a massive disruptor where somebody came and solved all of these challenges into making a very streamlined process. And I did experience one of them, but I think it's not yet of the size to disrupt everybody else in this part of the world. And I think what we're seeing is the friction of an old industry that would at some point need to rebuild itself completely, a little bit like retailers. Retailers went through this. Amazon, there is a reason why people buy from Amazon around the world. They just removed all the friction. And you don't get, a surcharge of whatever if you do it. You just don't get your item, you get another one the next day instantly. The refund is simple. And at some point, we talk a little bit about a very good explanation for the red massive spots here because once you are half like hybrid, half online, half not online, if you don't have customer service afterwards, you actually have a massive negative impact. Means if you go to a website, try to order something and go through everything, you don't find what you want and you call. By the time you get to the call button or find a contact, you are already at your extreme frustration level. So usually if somebody answers you at that level and treats you as if you are still in a neutral mood, you get more frustrated instantly. And some businesses that have online presence misunderstand the point that the customers, when they reach out to them, they treat them as if it's a fresh lead that they talk to them from scratch. No, the idea is once they reach a human, that human should be extremely competent to problem solve instantly. The best example would be in that is Amazon, for example. You reach out to the support, and they treat you instantly as somebody with a problem that needs to be solved now. And these, I mean, every other industry can learn from that fact.
Yeah, the omni-channel seamless experience, for sure.
That's an excellent point, Nabil, especially because with the other industries that we've looked at, some of them such as florists and bakeries and things like that, the customer tends to go in more exploring a want, not necessarily a need, but a want. It's an important want in some cases, like flowers for a wedding or something, but they have various options, and they explore that throughout the process. And with the rental car, a lot of times, if there's any bumps at all, you're now in a very, very uncomfortable situation. You're late for a flight, or you're not getting to where you need to be on time. You're paying more than you plan to online. So there's a really, really critical component there, exactly like you said, where the brands should really be focusing on. If there's an escalation, it needs to be really handled promptly and quickly with competency.
I'll give you a small example about these weird hybrid systems that are not well thought of. I mean, not well thought of in the sense that the company sometimes, for some reason, becomes introverted. They only think of their problems and they solve their problems. They don't anymore think of the customer, right? So I'll give a personal experience and not actually like data-based experience, but the friction. So I rented the car online. So it was a very smooth experience because this was a digitized system, Uber style. But then they diverted me to the actual company that will give me the car. So I went there. They actually made me fill all the paperwork again, which is manually. And that I think took around easily 35 minutes. But more importantly, they made me sign a waiver on my privacy and my private data privacy. And when I asked about that, they explained that what if I don't pay, and they have to reach out to debt collector, and the debt collector is based in Europe, and therefore that debt collector requires a release on data privacy. Now, I've been renting cars for many, many years. I have never, ever experienced that at all. But this is an example of I was renting, by the way, a car for 1 day. So like whatever it is, the amount is like negligible. And it's not like a sports car where we're talking about thousands of dollars. No, we're talking about a small car for 1 day. But that's an example of adding friction. And if I wanted to review, I would review negatively in that case, and without solving the hurdles of it. Same thing, a week later, I rented a car for a week, and I absolutely talked to nobody, just a few buttons on the app. Car came to my house, few buttons on the app. They came pick it up from my office, not even my house. I knew nothing. And this is just two contrasts of I think, an old industry that is waiting to be renewed.
That makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to the next component of our episode here. So key takeaways with respect to the customer journey map. What we've seen here, the rental terms themselves, there's some obvious friction there. That's an area that could be improved. Focus on pricing transparency is definitely something that can always be improved in any industry. That should be a target that people shoot for, is making sure that pricing is very transparent upfront and not late in the game, especially while you're busy trying to catch a flight or get to a particular destination, handling a rental car issue. Enhancing the post-rental communication is something that the brands can obviously do, and we've also seen here that the consideration stage could be improved, particularly the greeting from the frontline staff. That's very, very important to be empathetic with the customer, help them into and out of their car as quickly and efficiently and pleasantly as possible. So taking it a step deeper here, let's talk a bit about the marketing mix funnel matrix. All right, the marketing mix funnel matrix, or as we call it, MFM for short, is a framework that we created that integrates elements of the marketing mix itself. So these are the 7 Ps from before: the product, price, promotion, place, people, process, and physical evidence. You'll see all of those on the left-hand side of this chart. And we cross-reference those with the stages of the customer journey across the top. Those are the 5 stages of awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and advocacy. And what we can see here is the negativity tied to each of those stages with respect to customer complaints and the online reviews, the mentions and negative aspects there across the marketing mix. And so we can see right away that if we look at the first row, people, the consideration column there, the second column is very much red. Almost a quarter of the online reviews were frustrated or expressing negative reviews with respect to the consideration the consideration stage and the people. So this is a very obvious and specific area potentially to focus on in improving the customer experience. Similarly, you can see under conversion, 4 more arrows pointing out the next 4 areas that could be improved significantly, which are in the product, the conversion stage there, and also the process, the price, and the place. So this is the conversion. This is the actual portion of obtaining that rental and dealing with a lot of those frustration points there, like we were just talking about on the prior slides. So now we'll talk about creating a starter voice of the customer survey for the car rental industry, and we'll let Emil talk about that and walk us through it.
Thank you, Erik. So the challenge with creating the starter VOC survey is how to craft that survey so that we can capture the most valuable insights with the least amount or with the lowest, smallest number of questions. So here what we know is that, or what we can assume is that we have already captured insights using and utilizing the online reviews and ratings. And we know from the online reviews and ratings that certain areas of the customer journey and certain elements of the marketing mix are very important for the customers. And we know that because they talk about those more frequently. And what we really want to understand is the areas where they talk about not just in high frequency, but also with a negative sentiment. So in that context, the starter voice of the customer survey can be created by harnessing the insights from the customer sentiments, thoughts, and feeling expressed in their online reviews and focusing on the areas that customers talk about most frequently, specifically the areas with the most negative sentiment. So what we will show here is how this is done using the marketing mix funnel matrix that Erik just explained. So going back to the cross-section of the marketing mix and the customer journey, what we can see is that there are 3 areas where there is a prevalence of the negative sentiment, and this is consideration people, conversion product, and conversion price. And what we know from the online reviews is that with regards to the first one, the weakest performing step in the customer journey was the greeting, so the welcoming from the rental agency staff. And this from all negative aspects, this amounted to a little bit over 23%. Next is the conversion and product. The weakest performing step here is a vehicle selection and customization options. This is close to 19% of all negative aspects. And the third most prevalent, weakest performing step is the pricing and payment. We also see that there is a weak performance in a rental terms explanation, as we saw from the customer journey and with the experience of the rental environment. So we take these 5 weakest performing steps from the mixed funnel matrix, and we'll utilize those, knowing these are important for the customers because they talk about these steps most frequently and in the most negative way. And we're going to build a voice of the customer survey in a way that we can dive deeper into that frequent and, in this case, also negative sentiment. So what we suggest as a framework for building the voice of the customer survey is a 7-question survey, starting with the question, how satisfied are you with the brand, which is a generic customer satisfaction survey question, and finishing with a net promoter question on a scale of 0 to 10. How likely are you to recommend brand to a friend or a colleague? And then within these 2 questions that form the framework of the starter VOC survey, we sprinkle in these 5 what we consider the most important questions that we want to dive deeper into the customer thoughts and feelings and understand on a lower level what is driving the negative sentiment.
This is the end of part 2 of our 3-part episode here on the Synergistic CX podcast, where we're focusing on the car rental industry. In the next segment, we will have a more in-depth discussion with our special guest, Nabil Rizkallah of GWR Consulting in Dubai, regarding the customer experience in this industry. Remember that you can find more details of this study for free on our website, cx-channel.com, and you can also follow the CX channel on LinkedIn or your favorite social media app.